House of EdTech, Episode 53.
Hi, this is Jennifer Cronk, Google Education Trainer and Google Certified Teacher, and you are listening to the House of EdTech with Chris Nesi.
The House of EdTech podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get your free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/House of EdTech. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Christopher Nesi, and the House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. My objectives include discussing technology that is changing our classrooms and schools and sharing tools and tips that you can hear about today and use tomorrow. I talk to teachers, leaders, and creators just like you and have them share their stories. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way we teach and how our students learn. And welcome back to the House of EdTech. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because, well, I don't know when you're listening, but thank you for listening, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the podcast. Coming up in this episode, I have the EdTech Thought, I have a couple of EdTech recommendations, and of course the House of EdTech VIP. Let's get started. We're going to jump right into some feedback that I got from the last episode, episode number 52, that I did with Caitlin. If you recall, was called NCLB, No Cash Left Behind. And I have feedback from Stacy and Danny. So let's go to the House of EdTech answering machine.
You have one new message.
Hey, I just listened to the episode of House of EdTech where you and Kate co-hosted. I just wanted to congratulate you guys on a job well done. I love listening to you guys go back and forth and be silly and all married couple. It was very cute. I love that it was personal and that you guys had some really great financial advice and shared your blank document with us. I can't wait to check that out on your show notes page, and I just want to say you guys did a great job. I love Kate's House of EdTech recommendation, and good job being you guys. It was fun. Thanks for keeping it tech, and thanks for making it personal.
Thank you, Stacy, for submitting your feedback. And Stacy did that via Voxer, where my username is Mr. Nesi. And Stacy and I are friends, so I appreciate her. And Stacy, I appreciate you reaching out and sharing your positive feedback. Caitlin and I had a great time doing the episode together, and spoiler, well, she's not here today, but she will be in the next episode, episode number 54. So I'm going to be excited to bring her back to the show here, as my life is kind of crazy right now, between taking 2 grad courses, teaching at Rutgers, which I will talk about in a couple of minutes. But we had a great time putting the episode together and giving you guys a little look at how we do things that you might learn from and might benefit from as well. And again, as Stacy mentioned, we did release a template of our budgeting spreadsheet that we keep in Google Docs. And if you go to the show notes for episode number 52 over on chrisnesi.com, you can get a free copy of that template. And I'm not asking for your email. You just go to the show notes page and you can get a copy of that Google spreadsheet. And next up is some feedback from Miss Danny Kennis.
Hi, Chris and Kate, if you are or will be listening.
She did hear this.
To the House of EdTech right now, your most recent episode, and I am really loving it. It's making me think about a lot of things that I need to be thinking about, and it's making me feel a little bit guilty, only because I know I don't spend my money or save my money the way that I really should. And I do have a budget, but I'm not as independent as I would like to be. in terms of my budget because my dad is actually my accountant. He kind of does a lot of that stuff for me. But anyway, it's making me think about a lot of things, and I just love listening to you guys talk. And I kept thinking, like, when am I going to be at that point of being mature and responsible and knowing that, you know, it's not okay to go out to dinner every weekend, and just being at the point where, like, even though I want to go on vacation, I have to accept the fact that, like, I can't because we only make X amount of money. So it was just, it's nice to hear everything that I know already being reinforced, especially coming from two people who, and I don't at all mean this to make you feel old, but hearing you and Kate talk reminds me of my parents, because you guys are both very responsible, and I guess at this point the impression that I'm getting is cautious with your money, but in the best way possible. My parents are very much like that, and Kenneth's parents are completely opposite, so I kind of get to hear it from every side. So I'm just thankful that you guys made this podcast, and it's really, really nice to be able to listen to it. I don't even think I'm halfway through the episode right now, but I just wanted to tell you before I forgot, I think you and Kate should definitely do more episodes together about, like, little life tips and life lessons. I'm trying to think of topics off the top of my head. One thing I always think about is just raising your kids to be good people, which I know Miles and Colton are young, so you don't really know what kind of people they are, but that's what I think about a lot. But that's what is going on in my head right now. So awesome job so far with the episode, guys.
Thank you, Danny, so much. And I have another clip from Danny to play because she's a double Voxer. She also submitted via Voxer, which, again, is just the easiest way to get me some audio feedback as you're listening to an episode. But to work backwards in what Danny had said, we're not offended that you called us old, basically. I know you're kidding, but I also understand what you mean. And we are we're cautious with our money. We splurge every so often. But what didn't come up, I mean, we're not big vacation takers. We're not, going out to dinner, multiple times a week. We enjoy spending time, in the kitchen, at home, enjoying the fruits of our labor. And I mean, Lord knows we have labored, her with 2 children, and she puts up with me. If she were here, she'd laugh at that as I look over at the empty chair across from me. But again, she'll be filling that seat for the next episode. And as I said, Danny double voxed. So here we go. Here's and this one, Danny has a question that I will address. So take it away, Danny.
I'm back. I thought of a question. So you're talking about how you guys are debt-free and you paid off all your loans and everything, and I did too. I paid off my grad school loans, and that was pretty huge for me. And now, as I'm thinking about the future and more schooling, I really, really want to go back to school, and every day that goes by, I'm kind of more and more eager to get a leadership degree. So first of all, I want to hear about that. I'm sure everyone will want to hear about that, though. Your classes and how they're going, I don't even know if it started, but was there a question in your mind when you decided to take those classes of, can I afford this? Do we have the money? Should I be doing this? Like, is it selfish to do this? Because that's what I think about a lot. Like, I mean, I obviously don't have a house. I pay rent, but it's to Kenneth, and we don't have kids yet. But we are thinking about all those things, as you know, and I feel like, is it selfish to be spending money on that when I have all this stuff coming up that I could be spending or saving money towards? I'm going to keep boxing with, like, little thoughts that pop into my head, so I hope you don't mind.
Danny, I got to say, you have to do what's best for you. And what I think you should do, so here's where I snuggle up to the microphone, and it's just me and you, except everybody else can hear us. If you don't have major financial obligations right now, I say go to school, because kids aren't cheap. Mortgages are more expensive than rent, or they can be, depends on where you're living. You don't have the same commitments that you will down the road. It will only get tougher to find the time, once you get into motherhood, if that's where you're going, do it while you can now. It's not selfish, because nobody ever has kids because they've saved up enough money to have kids. It's the same thing, when you get married. You'll never be financially ready. You just kind of got to go through it and do it. So I'm going to encourage you to find the grad program that's right for you and start taking those classes. It's 100% worth it, and the payoff will happen later because it'll lead to increased salary. When you have little Kennesses, or for those of you who aren't, Danny, it's easier to go to school when you don't have kids. For me, we made the decision based on the fact that our kids are still relatively young. They go to bed early enough where I can do work off hours, so they can be in bed. I can do work at night. I have time that I can do work sometimes during the day at school. So it works for us. And because of the decisions we've made in other areas with our finances, affording it was never a question. The payoff will come in terms of a larger salary, a better paying job down the road. So yeah, go for it. Absolutely. Another piece of feedback, I wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Craig Peters. He is at Craig Peters on Twitter, CraigPeters. And Craig is the CEO of Awasu Design, AWASU. And I hope I said that right. I'm pretty sure I did. And that can be found at awasudesign.com. And Craig, I just wanted to thank you and let everyone know that you're on the short list of somebody who has binge listened to every episode of the podcast. And over the last couple of weeks, Craig has shared a lot of feedback with me about the episodes via Twitter. So make sure you connect with him. His company, Awasu Design, really has done some high profile work for Fox Sports, Wells Fargo, Yelp, just to name a few companies that his firm is doing web design, app, mobile. They do tech. They do tech for big companies. And he's also interested in getting involved in the education space. So he's been listening to relevant content. And I'm honored to say that he's been listening to the show and he's listened to the whole show. Craig, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you continue to enjoy it. And I look forward to learning more from you and talking to you in the future. Thanks again for your feedback. Now, with a lot of feedback coming into this episode, I've kind of thrown this out on Twitter, and a couple of people have favorited it, liked it, retweeted it, but I'd like to put in a new segment here on the show. And I'd like you to send me, via audio or email or tweet, I want you to send me your EdTech or tech questions. Not like ask me anything, but I'd really like to incorporate more of you into the show. And the only way I can do that is if you send me questions. So you want to use Voxer. My username is Mr. Nessie. You can call the House of EdTech hotline. The phone number is 732-903-4869. And just in the last couple of minutes, as I've played audio feedback, send me your questions. I will answer them to the best of my ability here on future episodes of the podcast. So the sooner I start to get those questions from you, the sooner I can open up this segment and incorporate it into the show. And I also want to take a second to thank my Patreon supporters, the awesome people who are helping me to do some amazing things with the podcast, physically and technologically. So thank you to the awesome supporters. If you're interested in becoming an awesome supporter of the House of EdTech, then you can go to patreon.com/House of EdTech. And the support I'm currently receiving is helping me to host this podcast physically and, electronically over on Libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN. And Libsyn is the largest dedicated media host, and they have been that way since 2004. Now, I'm also currently working on some changes to the show in terms of some shiny new things. And there's going to be more about that coming up this spring and over the summer here in 2016. But what I'm looking to do wouldn't be possible if I didn't have the awesome support that you guys are giving me, and that's coming through patreon.com. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was the Education Podcast Network over on edupodcastnetwork.com. I founded this network in April of 2015, and what I wanted to do was take a moment to highlight some of the great podcasts that you can be checking out if you're not already listening. I started the network with eight or 10 podcasts. I I don't really remember. It was 8 or 10. And these are some really great shows. The whole premise is that these are podcasts that are created for you that are educators by people who are educators in the classroom or heavily involved in the education field. But for the most part, these are still people who are doing amazing things in education. So our great, awesome podcast first, Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers, which Angela Watson is a fabulous, fabulous woman who is super knowledgeable. Her podcast is about, anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes long. It's weekly. And she talks about great motivational topics that really jumpstart you for the week. Another show on the network, the Cult of Pedagogy podcast, hosted by Jennifer Gonzalez. And that can be found at cultofpedagogy.com. And Jennifer's got some amazing resources. She's about to release a book, which I'm actually hoping to have Jennifer on the House of EdTech coming up here in the spring to talk about her book, which you guys will find super value in because it's about EdTech. So be sure to check out her podcast over on cultofpedagogy.com. And real quick, there's going to be links to all of the shows in the show notes, but the fastest way is just to go to edupodcastnetwork.com. Next up, we have the Early Childhood Research Podcast, which can be found over at liz's-early-learning-spot.com. And that's a really cool show. It is based out of Australia, and the host of the show, Liz, does an amazing job talking about early childhood, and the topics are really relevant to those of you working in elementary education, or even if you have younger kids of your own, get inside their heads. Some of the other popular shows, we have Principally Speaking with Jason Bodner, which can be found at principlyspeaking.com. Another new leadership podcast to the network, Better Leaders, Better Schools, hosted by Daniel Bauer over at betterleadersbetterschools.com. One of the podcasts I've been listening to for a long time in education is the Principal PLN podcast, hosted by Dr. Spike Cook, Jessica Johnson, and Teresa Stager. And they can be found at principalpln.com. And they also have a really great Voxer group that you can check out as well. Another leadership show, Transformative Principal with Jethro Jones. Jethro is a principal out of Alaska, and his podcast can be found at transformativeprincipal.com. AlwaysAlesson.com and Gretchen Schultek. She creates the Empowering Educators podcast. Great, great show. If you're not listening to Gretchen, you need to go over to alwaysalesson.com, check out her resources, and subscribe to her podcast. One of the coolest concepts for a podcast is the Edu Road Trip podcast, hosted by Justin Birkbickler, Mari Venturino, and the Greg Bagby. These three, they created the show, the Edu Road Trip podcast, and each episode, they take a virtual trip to a location to talk with their guest, and who they're speaking with correlates to where they are. They recently had on the Burgesses, the Burgeye. I don't know how you would really make it plural, but Teach Like a Pirate famed Dave Burgess and his wife Shelley. They came on to the podcast and totally rocked it. Check out the Edu Road Trip podcast over on eduroadtrip.com. Two awesome podcasts from Instructional Tech Talk, Jeff Herb, over on instructionaltechtalk.com. Jeff is now doing that show with John Samuelson, and his other short form podcast, EdTech You Should Know, can also be found on instructionaltechtalk.com. And from the TeacherCast universe, I'm very happy to have Jeff Bradbury be involved with the Education Podcast Network. And what Jeff is doing over on TeacherCast is really good stuff. He's producing live content, and he's always pushing out content that he's created via Twitter, so it's always relevant, and does a lot of screencasting. If you're not familiar with Jeff's stuff, you need to head over to teachercast.net. But two of his podcasts that are associated with the Education Podcast Network are his live Tech Educator podcast, which airs live Sunday nights at 7 o'clock Eastern Time over on teachercast.tv, and his podcast about podcasting for educators is called Educational Podcasting Today, which can also be found on teachercast.net. Our lone video podcast, the hashtag 30-second take with Dr. Brad Gustafson, is a great concept. Brad puts the show together via Touchcast, and the premise of the show is two people he brings on have 30 seconds to debate an educational topic, and then voting on who is the quote-unquote winner takes place via Twitter. Very cool show. And Jeff Bradbury helps him produce that, and you can go to Brad Gustafson's YouTube channel, and those two people answer in 30 seconds an educational question, and then voting takes place via Twitter. So check out the hashtag 30-second take on Twitter and the podcast. And two more to go. We have Techlandia Radio, created by John Samuelson, and that can be found at techlandia.podomatic.com. Great show. It's like an all-star team of hosts that rotate through depending on the episode and the topic. Great show, great podcast. I enjoy it when he's putting out episodes. It's fantastic. And last up, and it's the newest podcast to the network, the Dads in Ed podcast, which can be found at dadsined.podbean.com. Those guys do a great job on their show, and they do that live on Mondays via a Google Hangout. So if you check out Dads in Ed on Twitter and the hashtag Dads in Ed, you can find out when they're going to go live, and you can interact with their show as it happens. So as of January 2016, those are all the shows on the Education Podcast Network. I am so proud of all the people that I'm associated with who are creating podcasts and creating awesome content. And if you're listening to some of these shows, make sure you rate and review them. Make sure you send them feedback. Let them know how they're doing, just as you have done for me. Or if you haven't, let me know how I'm doing. Send feedback, and support the other podcasts that you listen to. And if there are shows that you haven't checked out yet, give them a listen. Each one of those shows is definitely worth checking out, and you can learn something. Or if it's not something you find value in, by all means, share it with somebody else who could learn from the podcast and the host. And before we get into the EdTech thought and the recommendation and the VIPs for this episode, I just wanted to give it'll be my first update, a grad school update. I'm taking 2 courses right now, simultaneously, 8 weeks, accelerated at Rowan University, and I'm not going to lie, they are kicking my butt. It's part of the reason why over this January, February time period, I haven't booked guests to come onto this podcast, because with the work I'm doing and the availability I have when I would normally be able to do interviews, I'm now doing the grad school work. So I'm not going to apologize, but I just wanted to give you an update that it's not easy, and I'm giving it my best effort to do well in these 2 courses so I can get my supervisor cert and hopefully move on to the next path, the next stage, the next level of my career. So one course I'm taking is about the individual as a leader, as a supervisor, and the other course is more geared towards looking at schools as the organization, being at the administrative level in a school district, and what that means and how schools run and what goes into that. So 2 really interesting courses. And if you're considering going into administration, feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to answer any questions, or at least point you to people who are doing it. There are a couple of great chats that happen on Twitter. I believe one is admin2be, the hashtag. So far I'm enjoying my time doing these studies. It's really interesting. And speaking of interesting, as I had mentioned in December, I picked up my first adjuncting or guest lecture position. So as of right now, technically I am Professor Nessie, and I had my first session at Rutgers with the course in their School of Communication called Leadership in Digital Contexts. And I am in love with this class, and it has really reignited my passion to teach. I have 15 students in the class. They are young, ambitious go-getters, and I am excited to, even only over a couple of weeks, to have, one, met them and had the opportunity to kind of guide them. Again, these are people who, it's not teaching, it's in the School of Communication, and I'm giddy. If you can't tell, I'm just really excited to, and I can't say to be up in the front of the room and lecturing because I'm not running the class that way. It's a hybrid course. We're doing discussion boards online, and on Monday nights we come into the classroom and I'm implementing what I would do, in a high school, really. Not teaching like a high school teacher, but I'm engaging the students. I'm creating the opportunity for them to do something, not just sit there and listen to me talk. So I'm just really excited with everything that's going on right now. So this has been like the longest intro. And again, there is not one specific feature topic for this episode. It's kind of like a mishmash, the buffet, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But let's get into my EdTech thought. And it's a little retro, but I think you'll like it. For this episode's EdTech thought, I'd like to share a little bit about the thank you note. I came across this video and article on the Art of Manliness website, and this is from their YouTube channel, and this is a video which the audio is perfect. So this is how to write a thank you note.
Gratitude is a virtue every man should cultivate, yet gratitude means nothing if you haven't mastered the art of expressing it. A man should use every opportunity to express to those around him how much he appreciates their love, support, and generosity. One of the key ways of expressing gratitude is the thank you note, and every gentleman should be knowledgeable of the whens and hows of writing them. When should you write a thank you note? Here are a list of appropriate occasions where a thank you note is in order. When you receive a gift, when someone performs an act of service for you, when someone goes above and beyond what is asked of them, whether at work or in a friendship, after a job interview, when you stay overnight at someone's home, if someone shows you around their town or city when you're on vacation, regardless of whether you stayed at their home or not, when someone has you over for dinner, when someone throws a party or event for you. Anytime someone does something extraordinary that warms your heart, don't be stingy with a thank you note. There's never a wrong time to write one. There are a few ground rules to follow when it comes to thank you notes. 1. Always write the note as soon as possible. Send it within 2 weeks of attending the event or receiving the gift. Number 2. Send it through the mail. Email thank yous are certainly convenient, but are often not appropriate. Sending a thank you note through the mail shows effort. It makes your thank you far more sincere. Number 3. Use real stationery. Having to run to the store to buy a card every time you need to write a thank you note will make you drag your feet about writing them. So invest in some nice-looking stationery. Buy something with a conservative, neutral theme so that the cards can be used for a variety of occasions. How to write a thank you note. Number 1. Begin by expressing your gratitude for the gift or service. Your opener is simple. Thank you very much for, etc. If the gift was money, use a euphemism for it, such as thank you for your kindness, generosity, or gift. Number 2. Mention specific details about how you plan to use a gift, or what you enjoyed about an experience. If you're thanking someone for holding an event like a party, be specific about what you enjoyed about it. If you were thanking someone for a gift, tell the note's recipient how you plan to use it. Number 3. For some recipients, add some news about your life. This isn't always appropriate, but if you receive a gift in the mail from people who you see infrequently and who would like to know more about what's going on in your life, give a brief sketch about what you've been up to lately. Number 4. Close by referencing the past and alluding to the future. If the person gave you the gift at a recent event, write, "It was great to see you at Christmas." Then say, "I hope we can all get together again next year." Or if the person sent the gift in the mail and you see them infrequently, simply write, "I hope to see you soon." Number 5. Repeat your thanks. Thank you again for the gift. Makes the perfect last line. Number 6. Valediction. Valedictions are the words or phrases that come before your name. The hardest part of a thank you note is often choosing a valediction that appropriately conveys the level of your relationship with the recipient. Love can sometimes seem too gushy, and sincerely can seem too formal. If your affections fall somewhere between these two expressions, here are some neutral valedictions that can fit a wide variety of situations and relationships.
And I'm just going to hop in here because he doesn't actually say them in the video. So what's on the screen now is yours truly, truly yours, kindest regards, warmest regards, best regards, and respectfully. Back to the video.
Relationships. And that's how you write a thank you note. And we'd like to thank you for your support of Art of Manliness.
So be sure to check out, it's a great website for men or women, but it's really geared towards getting back to, being the manly man that you may be if, you're a manly man, and how to do things that men do. Like talk like this. No, not really. But check out artofmanliness.com. And that's my EdTech thought. And now, let's do the EdTech recommendation first. Again, because I said I had two. The first one is how to record screencasts via YouTube. Came across this post off labnol.org, labnol.org, and there'll be a link to this in the show notes. But here are the steps on how you can create a screencast with YouTube. Step 1. Sign into YouTube with your Google account. Click the upload button in the upper left-hand corner and choose Events under Live Streaming. If you have never done this before, YouTube will make you verify with your phone number to enable live streaming. Step 2. You're now on the Create Event page. You're going to give your screencast video a title, set the privacy level of your video to either unlisted or private, and then click Go Live Now. Step 3. This is now going to open a Hangouts on-air page, and you can click the camera icon to turn off the webcam recording. Similarly, you can toggle the microphone icon if you don't wish to record your audio. Step 4. Now you can click the screen share button in the left toolbox and select a desktop window that you wish to record for your screencast. Remember that if you're using multiple virtual desktops, it will only show program windows that are on the active current desktop. Step 5. Click the Start Screen Share button to share your screen, and then click Start Broadcast to start recording the screen. Now, this is a private session, so nobody can watch your broadcast while it's being recorded. When you're done with the recording, you click Stop Broadcast, and you switch over to the YouTube website. And that's it. You can then go to your YouTube video dashboard, and you'll see the new screencast video that you just finished recording. And you can download the video to your Google Drive and share it with the world. And that is the first EdTech recommendation for this episode. Again, it comes from labnol.org, labnol.org. And the second recommendation I'd like to share with you is a new Google Chrome add-on that I found this week. And unfortunately, I forgot where I found it, but I am glad that I did. And it is called Docs Online Viewer. This allows you to open and view any online file right in your browser. It supports almost all major file and document formats, and it's fast and easy to use, and of course, it's free. Now, Docs Online Viewer introduces a convenient way to view documents on the web. It uses third-party online services like the Google Docs API, and it allows you to view extensions such as PDF, Doc, DocX, XLF, PowerPoints, rich text format, RTFs, ODT, ODS, so all the open document formats, as well as some PSDs, and basically, even if you don't have the software on your computer, you can view the file, which is really cool. So it'll open up a new tab, and once you have this add-on installed, next to any link on the web that would open up a file, you will see what it looks like. It's like a little blue piece of paper with the corner folded and a little cloud button. And you'll see that next to links on websites, not in searches, but on websites. And if you click the little icon and not the link, you'll get the new tab and you'll get a preview of the document. So that's really cool. And it is again called Docs Online Viewer. And those are my EdTech recommendations. And now it's time for this episode's House of EdTech VIP. Congratulations to Amanda Dykes. Amanda is an instructional technology coach and a former 6th grade technology and science teacher. Amanda is an expert in using technology as an integral part of her pedagogy, and she uses that to increase learning as well as training and exciting other educators into using technology in a way to increase student learning, because that's what it's all about. She works with teachers in the 56 schools within her district on ways to use technology with her students. Amanda demonstrates knowledge and proficiency in a use of a variety of Web 2.0 tools and their use and functionality in today's classroom. She also has an extensive understanding of social networking, which allows her to build and help you build a professional learning network, which will allow you to stay on the leading edge of shifts in education. She is presented at various technology conferences. She's, again, knowledgeable in social networking, as well as STEM topics, and she's presented all around the country. She's a big fan of Alabama football, the Red Sox, and the beach, and in my opinion, 1 out of 3 ain't bad. She can be found at amandacdykes.wordpress.com, and that's AMANDA, the letter C, DYKES.wordpress.com, and be sure to connect with Amanda on Twitter. Her username is Amanda C. Dykes. Congratulations, Amanda. You are the House of EdTech VIP. And that's going to do it for this episode of the House of EdTech. Again, episode number 53. Keep the conversation going. Visit the website, chrisnesi.com, CHRISNESI.com. The show notes for this episode, number 53, will contain all the links and all the information that I shared in the episode. I'd love to connect with you about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts, answer any questions you may have about the resources, or if you just want to talk. You could do that on the website by clicking Share Feedback, and that's going to give you my email and all the different ways that you can connect with me. The fastest is Twitter. My username is Mr. Nessie, and you can use the hashtag, well, I'd really like it if you use the hashtag, House of EdTech. And don't forget, I want to put in a new segment where I answer your questions or address your talking points or what you want to contribute to the show. I'd love to do that as soon as the next episode, so get the feedback in. Tweet me, use the hashtag House of EdTech, Voxer, the username is Mr. Nessie, or you can do it the quote-unquote old-fashioned way, and you can phone it in. The number is 732-903-4869. Now, if you enjoyed the House of EdTech, and if you've made it this far, you probably do, number 1, go tell somebody. That's the best way you can help me grow the show. If there's somebody you think would benefit from listening to these episodes, go tell them. And tell them that I sent you to send them to me. I think that makes sense. Number 2, rate and review the podcast on iTunes. Your rating and honest review will help keep the podcast front and center for others to discover and enjoy. So, I really appreciate in advance your ratings and reviews that you've given already. And for those of you still on the fence, what are you waiting for? go over to iTunes and do it. It's easy. I think I've said that before. And the other way that you can help support the show is through patreon.com, where you can become an awesome supporter of the podcast. And you can do that by going to patreon.com/houseofedtech, and Patreon is patreon.com/houseofedtech. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be speaking again to Caitlin. We're going to bring her back, and I'll be able to look at her. We're hard at work on the episode, and that's going to be released on February 14th, 2016. Thanks again for listening, joining me, and remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try. The House of EdTech is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more, go to edupodcastnetwork.com.